Those countries with whom we cannot return people, if these people are not going to Rwanda, where is the government going to go put these people that we cannot return?
What you're about to see is one of the most baffling exchanges you'll ever witness in a parliamentary committee. A Labour MP under direct questioning makes a claim so absurd that it leaves even seasoned MPs looking stunned.
Because the issue was that we didn't think that it was possible to make...
We're talking about scrapping key powers on illegal migration, removing the duty to deport, and even watering down age checks for those claiming to be children. But here's the kicker, they're still insisting it's all under control.
That we actually inherited from the previous government as a result of the practical outcomes of those two pieces of legislation.
I understand that, colleague, but we don't think as part of the approach that it should be an obligation on the government to remove people who come here legally.
No, we certainly haven't said that.
Stay with me, because in a moment you'll hear the exact words that made the room fall silent, and decide for yourself if this is incompetence, spin, or something far worse. Before we roll the clip, tap like now so this video breaks out of the algorithm cage, subscribe if you're new here, and tell me in the comments, do you trust this government to fix our borders?
Looking at changing approach, and particularly around the repeal of the Illegal Migration Act, in section 2, where we remove, by repealing this, we will remove the obligation on the government to remove people who arrive here illegally. What's the rationale behind that?
The Illegal Migration Act was flawed legislation which didn't actually work, and it was so flawed that the previous government, even though they put it onto the statute book, didn't actually commence very much of it at all.
In particular, the obligation to remove people who arrive here illegally. So whether it's in that legislation, whether it's in the legislation that you bring forward, why are we removing that as a principle?
Because the issue was that we didn't think that it was possible to make the suite of legislation which involved the Safety of Rwanda Act and the Illegal Migration Act together to work coherently. And the effect of it was essentially to allow people into the country, to make it illegal to process them and just leave them stuck in an ever-lengthening backlog in limbo. So the whole approach established by the interplay of those two acts of Parliament, one of which was barely commenced, most of which, even though it was on the statute book, wasn't commenced, had to be taken away so that we could bring some order to the chaos that we actually inherited from the previous government as a result of the practical outcomes of those two pieces of legislation.
I understand that, colleague, but we don't think as part of the approach that it should be an obligation on the government to remove people who come here legally.
No, we certainly haven't said that. We will, as soon as people have had their asylum claims properly processed and the appeals that they are allowed to make to that finished, we will certainly seek, if they've failed, to remove them, but not to a third country.
And the Illegal Migration Act also made provisions in section 57 and 58 allowing for scientific age verification. We're removing that as well. Why would we want to remove those powers from our agencies? We've seen the consequences in terms of safeguarding and the impact that could have on young people. Why would we not want to give all of the agencies all of the powers they could possibly have?
There are real issues about the accuracy of age assessment, scientific age assessment. And we are in the middle at the Home Office of doing work to try to see if we can get a system of scientific age assessment that is actually robust enough to use. So we're certainly not ruling it out, but again, the effects in that piece of legislation were all about the duty to remove. It was about trying to define children. You will remember that the duty to remove excluded children, which created in the IMA, which created a bigger incentive for people to claim perhaps that they were children when they weren't. And the scientific age assessment clauses in that act were actually related to the duty to remove. Given that we are repealing the vast majority of the Illegal Migration Act in this bill, we removed those clauses. But I wouldn't want to give the honourable gentleman the false impression that we have completely abandoned the idea of doing scientific age assessment. We are currently trying to assess whether there are ways of doing this which are cost effective, but also which can be relied upon. It's not an easy thing to do. There are no very, very easy solutions to whether it's accurate or not. And it's those areas that we're exploring ahead of making any subsequent announcements about if and how, if we do, we will use scientific age assessment.
And then I'm sure we could spend all day arguing about the pros and cons of Rwanda, but very specifically we see the effectiveness of returns agreements where they're in place, but then for those countries with whom we cannot return people, if these people are not going to Rwanda, where is the government going to go put these people that we cannot return to?
Well, firstly, we will always seek to return people if they've failed the asylum systems and had all of their claims and appeals as soon as it's safe to do so. So that's the first thing to say, and we must never lose sight of that. Situations in particular countries do change, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worst, as the honourable gentleman knows. And so we don't ever give up on that. And clearly, if people are here and they've failed, we want them to leave, and we will facilitate them to leave.
But where we don't have the ability to return, where we have countries where we can't return those people, they were going to go to Rwanda. Now where are they going?
Well, with all due respect, I don't think they were ever going to go to Rwanda.
So, thank you. Jo White.
Do you believe that the Board of Commanders' powers need to be enhanced?
Well, the Board of Commanders is very happy with the powers that he has. He's been appointed, and again we'll talk about this in some detail, but it's really important that we can get coordination across different areas of activity, and I think you'll have heard what the NCA witness said about how he wants somebody else to do the coordination while he does the basic work. Everybody's working together very well across the people that have to have regard. The Border Security Commander is bringing together a range of very important players in this area to strategise and coordinate. And he hasn't told me, and I meet him regularly, that he needs any more powers.
Thank you. Pete Wishart.
Two quick points following the compelling evidence we've heard today. I think it's been a very, very good session. And the two things that come across powerfully to me is this view that this is going to do very little to actually tackle the gangs. And I think we heard that consistently through the evidence. They'll just adjust their business model. They've got monopoly on their irregular migration trade. So they're obviously going to do what they can to maintain it. And the other thing is going to have very little impact upon people making the decision to come to the United Kingdom. They're fleeing oppression, poverty and war, and they don't care about the laws of the United Kingdom. What Angela Eagle's doing in a migration bill, that's not going to deter them from coming here. So what are we going to do to get on top of this, and should we be thinking as we go through this bill, look at fresh new ideas to tackle this?
Well, we've just come out of a period of fresh new ideas and gimmicks and very expensive.
That's gone.
Very expensive.
Labour members raise that all day today. That's
very
gone.
Expensive they turned out to be. We've inherited such a mess with huge backlogs, with very long waits for appeals that we've got to try to clear, with an asylum system that essentially broke down. I think one of our witnesses was talking about it being in meltdown earlier today. We're going to do the day job and start to get that system working. I think that fast, fair and effective immigration decisions is very, very important part of all of this, as is removing those who fail, so that we can actually get to the stage where people know that if they come to this country and they don't have a reasonable chance of being accepted as an asylum seeker, they will be returned. I think that's what the deterrent is.
If you think moments like this shouldn't be buried under layers of mainstream spin, then you can help make sure it gets seen. Every like, every share, every comment tells the algorithm to push this to more people, including those who still believe the government's got this handled. So hit like now, make sure you're subscribed, drop your thoughts below, and send this to a friend who needs to hear what was just said in Parliament.